If you find yourself dealing with a narcissist, the single most important thing to understand is that they are not engaging with you the way most people engage with each other. You operate from a core belief that relationships are built on mutual respect, on give and take, on genuine understanding between two people. That's a healthy lens, and it's exactly what makes real human connection possible in the first place. But a narcissist sees the entire picture completely differently. Their whole approach isn't rooted in collaboration at all. It's rooted in dominance. A narcissist's primary objective in any interaction is to secure power, admiration, belief, and validation entirely on their own terms. If twisting the truth accomplishes that, they'll do it without hesitation. If gaslighting you into doubting your own clear perception gets them there, they'll act on it without a second thought. If chipping away at your self-assurance makes you more agreeable and easier to control, that is precisely the path they'll take, and they won't feel a shred of guilt about it. This is exactly why they can cause so much damage. Many people mistakenly believe that if they just offer enough kindness, enough patience, enough clear explanation of their feelings, the narcissist will eventually come around and see reason. That belief is a complete fantasy. A narcissist doesn't learn through logic, through civil conversation, or through moral appeals. They only learn through consequences. If you ignore this fundamental reality, you're setting yourself up for endless frustration, deep self-doubt, and eventual emotional burnout. So how do you actually put this understanding into practice? First, you need to start watching patterns of behavior instead of listening to words. Narcissists are remarkably skilled at saying exactly what you long to hear. They'll promise to change, they'll perform regret convincingly, they'll even play the victim to keep you tethered to their drama. But the real question you should be asking is this: what do their actions consistently reveal? If there's a clear pattern of lying, manipulating, or disrespecting you, then that pattern is the actual truth of the situation, regardless of whatever verbal promises get made along the way. Second, you need to recognize that narcissists rely on specific, identifiable psychological tactics to maintain their grip on control. One of the most subtle and damaging of these is gaslighting, which works by making you lose trust in your own perception of reality. They'll flatly deny saying things, even when you have proof otherwise. They'll quietly rewrite history, adjusting the story bit by bit until you find yourself apologizing for something that was never your fault to begin with. The more energy you pour into these arguments, the more control they actually gain, because the very act of defending your position puts you in a subordinate role. You end up reacting to their agenda, which means they're the ones setting the terms of the entire discussion. Another frequent tactic is intermittent reinforcement, mixing moments of affection with cruelty in unpredictable cycles. This particular strategy is incredibly potent because it mimics the core mechanism behind addiction. If someone treats you badly all the time, you'll eventually pull away for good. But if they occasionally offer you flashes of warmth mixed in, your mind becomes fixated on chasing that reward, desperately hoping that if you just behave the right way, you'll get more of the good moments and fewer of the bad ones. This creates a harmful dependency where you stay, not because the relationship is genuinely nourishing, but because you're chasing brief flashes of warmth that were really just tools of manipulation all along. Then there's projection. The narcissist will accuse you of possessing the very faults they themselves carry. If they're being dishonest, they'll turn around and call you the liar. If they're the emotionally volatile one, they'll insist that you're the irrational one. This accomplishes two things at once. It distracts everyone from their own behavior, and it keeps you so consumed with defending yourself that you lose sight of what's actually happening. Understanding these tactics isn't about becoming a paranoid or distrustful person. It's about achieving clarity. It's about shedding illusions and finally seeing the facts exactly as they are. Because once you see the game being played, you stop being a willing player in it. And when you stop playing, the narcissist loses their power over you entirely. So if you want to stop being controlled, manipulated, and drained, the very first step is simply learning to see the narcissist for who they actually are, not who you wish they could be. The truth, even when it's difficult to accept, is always more useful in the long run than a comforting lie. One of the most devastating traps you can fall into with a narcissist is chasing their approval. And I don't just mean the obvious attempts to impress them. I mean the subtle, almost automatic ways you shift your own behavior to avoid their criticism, to earn even a small crumb of their acknowledgement, or to finally, just once, be treated with the basic respect you deserve. This trap is easy to fall into because we're all fundamentally wired for social connection. When we invest effort into a relationship, into personal growth, into family, we expect on some basic level that our contributions will be recognized. We tell ourselves that if we just explain ourselves clearly enough, if we demonstrate our loyalty, our good intentions, our patience, The narcissist will eventually acknowledge it and adjust their behavior accordingly, but that moment never actually arrives. This is because narcissists don't operate on a principle of give and take at all. They don't view your efforts as a reason to respect you. They view them as proof that they control you. Every single time you bend yourself into a pretzel trying to avoid their disapproval, you're confirming their power over you. Every time you wait around for their validation, you're handing over control of your own sense of self-worth. If you believe there's some magical combination of words or actions that will finally make them see your true value, you're wasting valuable time and energy, because for a narcissist, the goalposts are perpetually shifting. The moment you think you've finally done enough, they'll introduce a brand new standard you were never actually meant to meet in the first place. The key realization here is this: it was never about you. Their inability to treat you with basic respect isn't a judgment of your worth as a person. It's a direct symptom of their own deep-seated psychological issues. A narcissist's self-image is fragile, built on a shaky, inflated belief of superiority that has to be constantly propped up and defended. They cannot allow themselves to be wrong about anything, because that would shatter the illusion they've built around themselves. They cannot allow other people to be genuinely seen or valued, because that would mean surrendering some measure of their control. So instead, they move through life extracting, manipulating, and minimizing the people around them, because that's the only way they know how to maintain their inflated self-image. True freedom from narcissistic control begins when you stop seeking their approval, stop defending yourself, and stop chasing the closure they may never provide. Instead of engaging in endless arguments or trying to prove your worth, you reclaim your power by trusting your own reality and finding validation within yourself. Narcissistic dynamics often rely on emotional reactions, so detachment becomes the key to breaking the cycle. By refusing to feed conflict, accepting that you cannot force understanding or accountability, and protecting your peace through strong boundaries, you remove the influence they once had over your emotions and choices. This is where the concept of gray rocking becomes genuinely valuable. It's a psychological technique where you make yourself as uninteresting, as unemotional, and as disengaged as possible when interacting with a narcissist. They thrive on dramatic reactions, whether that's anger, frustration, sadness, or even affection, because reactions of any kind mean they still hold control over you. But if you refuse to take the bait, if you stop giving them the dramatic emotional display they're hunting for, they lose their leverage over you entirely. They get bored. They move on to easier targets. But let's be completely honest here. This is genuinely not easy to do. It isn't easy to sit in the presence of someone deliberately trying to provoke you and simply refuse to react. It isn't easy to hear ridiculous accusations leveled at you and choose not to defend yourself against them. It isn't easy to watch them twist reality and smear your name and simply respond with "believe whatever you want to believe." But it's absolutely necessary, because every single time you engage, every time you fight back, every time you try to validate yourself to someone who has no genuine interest in the truth, you're fueling the very dynamic that's exhausting you in the first place. This requires a form of powerful psychological self-discipline. It's the ability to say, I do not require this person's validation. I do not need to correct their false narrative. I do not need to win their approval or prove my worth in their eyes. And when you achieve that level of detachment, you become genuinely untouchable, because a narcissist cannot control what they cannot provoke. Ultimately, the most powerful response to a narcissist isn't fury, and it isn't even direct confrontation, it's indifference. When they realize they can no longer pull you into their chaos, they lose interest entirely, and that is precisely when you finally reclaim your freedom. One of the greatest hazards you face when dealing with a narcissist is getting pulled into the unending cycle of conflict they consistently generate. You might believe that if you can just make them see your side clearly, if you can finally prove your point convincingly, if you can get them to acknowledge their poor conduct, then everything will finally resolve itself. This is a mirage. A narcissist doesn't argue in order to find a solution. They argue in order to dominate. Their real goal isn't uncovering the truth, reaching a shared understanding, or even coherently defending their own position. Their goal is simply to keep you involved, to keep you emotionally invested, to keep you reacting. Because as long as you're reacting, you're still playing their game, and as long as you're in their game, they maintain their hold over you. Consider how this typically plays out in practice. You bring up a legitimate issue, something they did that was insulting, deceitful, or genuinely hurtful. A reasonable person, even if they disagreed with your interpretation, would at least try to understand your perspective and engage honestly with it. But what does a narcissist do instead? They deflect. They shift the blame elsewhere. They bring up some irrelevant offense you supposedly committed months earlier. They twist your own words against you. They accuse you of being the actual source of the problem. And before you even realize what's happened, you're no longer discussing their original behavior at all. You're aggressively defending your own character instead, and that's exactly where they win. Because the moment you start defending yourself, the entire focus of the conversation shifts away from their behavior and becomes about proving your own innocence instead. They've successfully flipped the entire situation. Now you're effectively standing trial, spending all your mental and emotional energy justifying yourself while they simply sit back and watch you drain yourself in a battle that was never designed to be fair in the first place. So how do you actually put a stop to this pattern? How do you remove yourself from this particular psychological battleground? You learn to disengage. You stop defending yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to win a debate that was rigged against you from the very start. This doesn't mean you let them treat you badly, and it doesn't mean tolerating abuse or staying silent in the face of injustice. It means refusing to take part in a rigged game. It means establishing boundaries that are genuinely non-negotiable. A narcissist thrives on emotional turmoil, and they'll use every ounce of energy available to them to keep you off balance. If you tell them, I won't accept being spoken to that way, they'll push harder just to test whether you truly mean it. If you say, I won't participate in this kind of argument, they'll try to provoke you until you break your own stated rule, because if they can get you to react, they win. They've proven that your limits were nothing more than empty words. Your task, therefore, is to make sure they aren't empty. Your task is to actually follow through. If you say you're ending the conversation, then end it. If you say you won't tolerate disrespect, then genuinely don't tolerate it. If you say you won't explain yourself further, then stop explaining. Because the instant a narcissist realizes their standard tactics no longer work on you, they begin to lose interest entirely. You're no longer the easy target they once assumed you were. But here's the most challenging part of all this. Remaining firm with your boundaries requires you to tolerate a significant amount of emotional discomfort along the way. It means resisting the intense urge to correct their lies about you. It means resisting the urge to defend yourself when they twist the truth right in front of you. It means accepting that they will never acknowledge the truth simply because they choose not to, and being genuinely okay with that reality. Your peace, your integrity, and your self-respect don't depend on their acknowledgement. They depend entirely on your own ability to walk away from pointless conflicts, to refuse being drawn back in, to prioritize your own well-being over the illusion of winning an argument that was never winnable in the first place. Because in the end, the true victory isn't proving a narcissist wrong. It's proving to yourself that you no longer need their approval at all. There's a tough reality you have to fully accept when dealing with a narcissist. They will never respect your boundaries unless you actively enforce them. And enforcement doesn't mean continually explaining your boundaries over and over, hoping they'll eventually understand. It doesn't mean making empty threats you never actually follow through on. It doesn't mean hoping they'll suddenly develop self-awareness and start treating you with the respect you deserve. It means action. It means genuine consequences. You see, a narcissist doesn't perceive boundaries the way a psychologically healthy person does. A healthy person, when told your behavior is unacceptable and I won't allow it, will generally pause and reflect on that. They might not fully agree, but they'll respect your right to draw a line for yourself. A narcissist, on the other hand, sees your boundaries as a direct challenge, an obstacle standing in their way, a test of exactly how much they can get away with. And they'll keep pushing until they find the actual breaking point. This is precisely why half measures consistently fail. If you set a boundary but don't actually enforce it, all you've really done is teach the narcissist that your words are essentially meaningless, that if they push hard enough, apply enough emotional pressure, or manufacture enough guilt, you'll eventually back down. And once they know that, once they see your limits are genuinely negotiable, they'll exploit that weakness relentlessly going forward. So what does genuine enforcement actually look like in practice? It means being ready to end conversations the moment they cross a line. It means removing yourself from toxic situations, even when doing so creates temporary awkwardness or discomfort. It means recognizing that you don't have to argue, negotiate, or explain yourself indefinitely. You simply have to act. And this is where most people struggle because taking action is genuinely difficult. It's uncomfortable, and it comes with a real cost attached. Setting and enforcing boundaries means accepting that the narcissist is going to react badly to it. They will accuse you of being selfish, cruel, or unreasonable. They'll play the victim. They'll lash out because their interest was never in respecting your boundaries to begin with. Their sole interest lies in making you feel guilty enough to abandon those boundaries entirely. This is the exact moment you have to be strong enough to tolerate the discomfort of doing what's genuinely necessary. You have to accept that once you start enforcing real boundaries, the narcissist will likely escalate their behavior in response. If they previously relied on subtle manipulation, they might shift toward outright attacks instead. If they leaned on guilt trips before, they might play the victim even more dramatically now. If charm was their preferred tool, they might switch to open hostility instead. This pattern is sometimes called an extinction burst, a last-ditch effort to regain lost power once they realize their usual tactics are starting to fail against you. And this is exactly the moment where many people falter because the pressure can feel genuinely overwhelming. The accusations, the guilt, the manipulation, all of it tends to intensify at once. If you're not mentally prepared for it, you'll likely cave, thinking, maybe I'm being too harsh, maybe I should just explain myself one more time. And the second you do that, the narcissist knows they still hold control over you. They'll temporarily back off, pretend everything is fine again, and then slowly but surely begin pushing once more. The only real way to break this exhausting cycle is to stop giving them any reason to believe they can change your mind, to demonstrate through consistent action, not just words, that your boundaries are genuinely real, are not up for negotiation, and that violating them carries consistent consequences every single time. That might mean cutting off all communication entirely, disengaging emotionally, or simply refusing to respond to their provocations, whatever the specific situation calls for. The key ingredient throughout all of this is consistency, because in the end, boundaries were never about controlling the narcissist's behavior in the first place. You will never actually control them. They'll always act in whatever way serves their ego, their control, and their sense of power. Boundaries are about controlling your own behavior instead, about deciding what you will and won't accept going forward, about choosing to remove yourself from situations that deplete you, and about prioritizing your own well-being over the illusion that you can somehow change who they fundamentally are. And when you finally commit to that, when you enforce your limits with unwavering resolve, something genuinely remarkable happens. The narcissist's grip on you starts to weaken. Their power fades away. And you begin reclaiming something they were never entitled to in the first place, your own self-determination, your dignity, and your peace of mind. That is a victory worth any amount of discomfort it takes to get there. One of the most painful yet necessary truths you have to accept when dealing with a narcissist is understanding that they will never give you real closure. That apology you're longing for, that moment where they finally acknowledge the emotional damage they caused you, it simply isn't coming. And the longer you wait for it, the longer you remain trapped inside their psychological grip. Here's the underlying reality. Narcissists do not reflect on their own actions in any healthy way. They don't lie awake at night wrestling with remorse, wondering how they might make amends for what they've done. They don't look back at the past and think, maybe I went too far that time. That simply isn't how their mind operates. Their sole focus was never the truth to begin with. Their focus is maintaining control at all costs. If that requires rewriting history entirely, if it means casting you as the villain of the story, if it means distorting reality so thoroughly that you start doubting your own memory, then that is exactly what they'll do without hesitation. And if you're not vigilant about recognizing this pattern, you'll waste years, possibly even decades, trying to extract something from them that they're fundamentally incapable of ever giving you. You'll hold on to the hope that if you just say the perfect thing, if you just present your side convincingly enough, they'll finally understand and acknowledge it. They won't. Not because the truth itself is unclear or complicated, but because admitting it would mean surrendering the power they hold over you entirely. So you're left with a choice. You can keep chasing an apology that will never actually materialize. You can keep replaying old conversations in your head, imagining different endings, trying to make sense of something that was never intended to be logical in the first place. Or you can decide that your own healing doesn't have to depend on them at all. You can decide that closure is something you have the power to give yourself. This is genuinely challenging because we're naturally wired to seek resolution. Our minds crave order and a clean, coherent narrative. When someone harms us, betrays our trust, and inflicts lasting wounds, we want acknowledgement. We want a sense of justice. We want the story to reach a clean, satisfying conclusion. But life is messier and more complicated than that. And with a narcissist specifically, the ending you're hoping for, the one where they finally take responsibility for their actions, is simply an illusion that will never come to pass. So what should you do instead? You have to reclaim your own narrative entirely. You stop waiting for them to set you free, and you set yourself free instead. This means fully accepting that some people will never understand the harm they've caused you and choosing to move forward with your life anyway. It means letting go of the mistaken belief that their validation is somehow required for your own recovery. It isn't. It never actually was. And that's exactly where true strength ultimately lies, because as long as you're waiting for them to acknowledge the truth, they still maintain a hold over you. As long as you're hoping for some moment of clarity to arrive from their end, they're still dictating your emotional state from a distance. But the moment you stop seeking their validation, the moment you decide that their opinion, their version of events, their refusal to acknowledge reality is fundamentally irrelevant to your life, That is the moment you truly win. That is the exact moment they lose their grip on you for good. And here's the paradox at the heart of all this. The less you need closure from them specifically, the more power you gain over your own life as a whole. The instant you stop explaining yourself, stop defending yourself, stop waiting around for something that isn't coming, you become genuinely untouchable. Because a narcissist's most powerful tool has always been their ability to manipulate your need for resolution. Take that need away from them, and they're left with nothing at all. Healing from a narcissist was never really about getting them to see what they've done to you. It's about seeing it clearly yourself, on your own terms. It's about recognizing that their fundamental lack of accountability isn't a reflection of your own self-worth in any way. It's simply a symptom of their own deep-seated brokenness. It's about understanding that closure never comes from them. It comes from you finally deciding that you don't need their permission to move forward with your life. And when you truly do that, when you genuinely let go, something remarkable happens. The burden they placed on you slowly starts to lift. The anger, the confusion, the self-doubt, all of it gradually begins to fade away. Not because what they did to you was ever okay, but because you've made the choice to no longer let it define who you are. Ultimately, the greatest form of retribution against a narcissist isn't proving them wrong, or forcing an apology out of them, or even publicly exposing their behavior. It's simply thriving without them in your life at all. It's living a life so rich, so independent, and so completely free from their lingering influence that they eventually become nothing more than a distant memory, a lesson learned along the way, and a chapter that's permanently closed for good.